ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow!
Blessed Sunday morning. We're still here, and Walter's around ready to go now because she gets double time on Sunday. So her 40-second work week counts for 80 seconds on Sunday. Come on, get that Father Dust going. We're not paying you for nothing. Basil wants to. I guess the 80 seconds is about up. You'll see a fine tip in your paycheck next week. Okay. So, a blessed Sunday morning to you. Welcome from the table in Basil's home, and in the house that Basil graciously allows Kristen and I to share with him, and welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. And obviously, little Jeffrey Peterson is waving to you also. We've got Bill Murray up in the hammock, along with Stephen Colbert, who's not started his stint on David Letterman yet. Letterman's last day is coming up soon, and then Stephen Colbert takes over at some point, and no doubt the show will be a lot better than it's been with David Letterman for quite a few years. And David Letterman was a really, he's a fine comedian. He did a good show, but after we've seen 8 million stupid pet tricks, no, Basil, they were all dogs, never a cat. That's why they call them stupid pet tricks. And Letterman go out in the street and have somebody use a catapult to fire a watermelon down the street. After they've done that about 3,000 times, it gets a little bit old after a while, and his banter with Paul Schaefer got to be pretty lame, actually. So, but he had a lot of good years on CBS. I mean, decades and decades. He was on NBC before then. He left in a very heated dispute with NBC because he wanted to be the replacement for Johnny Carson, and instead they chose the big dude with cars. I forget his name. We've forgotten about him already. But so Letterman said, "Screw you." He went to CBS. It couldn't be late night with David Letterman anymore because that was copyrighted. So it became the Late Show with David Letterman, and eventually it became a lead-in show for the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. And Ferguson's show was, for those last 10 years, was far superior to David Letterman. I mean, Ferguson did the same pretty much the same dopey stuff every night, but the timing was better. I mean, you gets to be 12:30 and you're tired anyway, and you want something that's light, and fluffy, and good to watch, and predictable, and if you fall asleep in the middle of the show, it's fine. It's a great show. You see what you can of it. He did marvelous interviews for those of us that stayed awake to watch the interview portion of the show. Craig Ferguson was a great interviewer. And of course he had Jeffrey Peterson, who's some relation to little Jeffrey Peterson up here. And oh, look at that, a leftover from Mother's Day. Well, I don't know. This way it's a flower, Happy Mother's Day, and this way it's a hemorrhoid, Happy Mother's Day. So we did some news Friday night, and we talked a little bit about a boxing match between Mayweather and Pacquiao, and how all the fans were pretty upset because they didn't get their fair share of blood and gore. I mean, they wanted to leave in the middle of the fight, apparently, and go down the strip and see the auto racing in hopes of a couple of cars getting smashed up and people getting mutilated and car parts flying into the stands and cars flying into the stands and all kinds of death and destruction. That's what people go to the car races to see. Who could be excited by this sound over and over and over again for hours? Vroom, 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 vroom. Okay, Basil, he wants to put in his 2 cents worth in on it. Okay, Basil said, vroom, 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 vroom. Who gives a fuck? Okay. So, Basil and I, we like to see. Well, there's no saving car racing because that's going to be boring one way or the other, no matter what happens, with all the vroom vroom vrooming going on. But with boxing, it's like just a recap. With boxing, we like our football defensive. We like to see a good defensive football game because we're still trying to figure out whether it was Vince Lombardi or Mrs. Vince Lombardi who called us in on a recent show from Beyond the Grave, and one of them said the best offense is a good defense, and the other one said the best defense is a good offense. And I guess that's why they were a pretty good couple. They're yin and yang, pretty much. Can I do that on television? It's what I can't do is on television. I guess I did it. So at any rate, so we got we're still waiting for BuddhaCat to come up here, and BuddhaCat. We also have a Facebook page for him, but it's not BuddhaCat. It's Oswald Cobblepot, because not only does he look like an orca, but he also looks like a character, not Catwoman in the Batman comics, but the Penguin. And on Gotham, which we never watched, but I've heard it's a good show. I'll take their word for it over at whatever station airs it. Oswald Cobblepot is the actual name of the character, the Penguin. And he's a weaselly little guy, and it's a younger version of the Penguin. So he's not all dressed up in, not all fat and galumpy like the Penguin that we're used to in the Batman comics. But Oswald Cobblepot is the actual name of the character who goes by the moniker the Penguin. So, do you want to talk more about the Scottish referendum and the British election? He said, yeah, we really didn't cover that enough yet. Actually, what he said was, said, hell yeah. As you recall, we had some live coverage of the Scottish referendum last year, and we thought the referendum kind of settled it. David Cameron, Prime Minister of Great Britain, kind of thought the referendum had given the Scots a chance, and he stroked them and patted them and said, "Oh, we're going to take good care of you. You want to be part of Great Britain. We're kind of moving towards getting part of that that European Union, or as he came to later call it, EU, or even EU." So he stroked him and kept him in as part of the British Empire, because the Scottish people are very much in tune with the notion of being part of the European Union, or as David Cameron calls it, EU, because Scotland has vast oil reserves in the North Sea, and they've got they're a country that's not stuck in history like Great Britain is, and they would be real happy to be part of the European Union, or I said it enough times. So they were kind of hoping that Great Britain would lean toward getting into the European Union eventually. So the election's coming up, and Cameron wants to stay Prime Minister. He wants his Tory party to to stay in power. So he gins up his base by talking about how stupid those Scots were, that they want to be part of the EU, and how great it is to be an independent country and not part of that socialist bunch of crazy socialist guys in all the other countries in Europe, particularly Greece. And he wants to play the anti-union card and play to the wealthy of the wealthy of the wealthy in Great Britain, which I guess starts at the top with the monarchy. And he gins his base up and he wins the election. And all of a sudden, Scotland wakes up the day after the election, and the Scottish voted heavily for the other candidate, whose name has already been forgotten because he wasn't very memorable, apparently. So they wake up and they realize that Cameron was really screwing with them during the referendum last year. So the call goes out again. Scottish referendum number 2, or as we say in the Mexican area of Scotland, Scottish referendum dos. And we'll be probably looking at another referendum fairly soon. I mean, Cameron described it when it happened as being a once in a generation, or once in a decade, or once in a century kind of gig. But I thought he had it all settled, but I guess he got the Scottish people a little bit annoyed. So I think fairly soon you're going to see Scottish referendum 2. And Basil's calling it already. He's got the results in already. That the Scottish people are basically going to say to David Cameron and to the British Empire, they'll break off on their own. They'll join the European Union, and Britain can shrink down to even smaller than it's been since they lost. Now, how many countries did Britain have at one time? How many parts of the world do they have? Okay, they had China, fairly sizable country. They had India, fairly sizable country. I guess they let the French have a little bit of Southeast Asia until the Vietnamese kicked them out of there at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954, after which, of course, America decided to, if stupidity was good enough for the French, it was good enough for us, and jumped in there, and that went about as well as Iraq. So Britain owned China, they owned India, the 2 most populous countries in the world now, and they were fairly populous at the time. A lot of people the British controlled. A little further back, they owned a sizable portion of America, what's now the United States. They owned a big portion, pretty much almost everything east of the Mississippi, as 13 colonies, and eventually they lost that. Now, Spain at that time held Florida, and eventually lost that in I don't know, some war or other, or some sale of land to the United States. The French owned the Louisiana Territory, which the United States bought for about $1.50, and which was at that point about 1/1000th of a cent per 100 acres, and fairly important part of the United States now. Of course, Texas came over from Mexico by fighting for independence from the Mexicans, claiming they wanted to be part of the greatest country in the world, which would allow them to keep their slaves. Mexico had outlawed slavery decades earlier, but graciously allowed the Texicans to keep their slaves. And finally, Mexico said, "Hey, enough's enough. You need to get rid of your slaves. We know you've got a big cotton industry down there, a big cotton crop down up in Texas and north of the Rio Grande." And Texicans said, "Screw you. We're going to show how patriotic we are to the greatest country in the world that allow us to have slaves." Joined, and now they're talking about going back because apparently they, at least they're trying to secede from the United States, and may God speed Texas. And while you're at it, why don't you take some of those welfare states like Louisiana and Mississippi and South Carolina that sponge off the rest of us, where we pay huge amounts of taxes and get not much back, and they pay a lot less taxes and get way more back from our federal government than they actually contribute to our federal government in the form of taxes. So, from us to you. So, or, I haven't done this in a while. I don't know. Where is it? Where's our bag of tricks? Well, at any rate, so, maybe down there. Hold on. Nope. Okay, we're gonna have to do a pretend. Oh, well, no, we found one. Okay, good. Hold on. Oh, we found both of them. Hold on. Okay. Okay, to Great Britain, what the, or as the Scottish are screaming this morning, what the, to Texas who's thinking about seceding, what the, go for it. We don't need you. But if you take Louisiana, South Carolina, Mississippi, and those other southern welfare states that sponge off the rest of us, you take them with you, we'll help you pack your bags. Then you can build your own darn fence in between you and Mexico. We're not supposed to be doing ads on the Sunday morning show, Basil. Actually, supposed to be getting some phone calls. We are. Well, your slippers are probably covering up half of what we're looking for right now. So here we go. Let's see. We got. Basil. Hold on. Hold the commercials for a bit. We have with us, and you knew her earlier in her life as the, or in her past life, as the Calico Cat, Lilith, Tail Included, free of charge. On Facebook, Lilith, Tail Included, free of charge. And Lilith, do you mind if I take a minute to do some shout-outs for some Facebook pages? Of course, Basil BuddhaCat on Facebook, where you'll find Basil BuddhaCat Presents, ! You'll also find it on YouTube, but it's easier to find on Facebook, Basil BuddhaCat. We've got Little Miss Fluffernutter, Walter Forest Cat. Walter Forest Cat has a Facebook page, Walter Forest Cat. Oswald Cobblepot has a Facebook page. And we had a cat in for, I don't know, it seemed like forever, but it was about 4 weeks. Real estate non-client. Actually, she was on the other side of the transaction. But she had to, hopefully, and she did, leave her house so my buyer could actually move into the house. And to facilitate it, I took her cat. And when I was over there, the cat was really quite nice. Jojo. Very nice cat. Beautiful orange tiger striped cat. Big hunk of a cat. Very, very friendly. The person who shall go nameless said, scratch it behind his ears. He likes that. And I did, and he did. And brought him here. Put him in the back bedroom so we could keep him isolated from Walter and Oswald, and give him a little chance to acclimate to the house. And every time Kristen and I would go in there to feed him, change his water, clean his litter box, which was pretty much every day. Well, twice a day for the food, once a day for the water, once every 3 days for the litter box. And the little son of the little hold on. The little mother scratched the hell out of us. I mean, I still got claw marks on me from Jojo Benedetto. And finally, we couldn't take it any longer, and we encouraged them to hurry up and get over here and take their darn cat back. Not to blame him. Jojo came with a lot of scars from his youth. Apparently, he came from the Humane Society in Newtown, and he was found in a dumpster with his 3 sisters. And so he got off to a rather rough start, but he's had a number of years now to acclimate himself to being a little bit friendlier with everybody. And so we had him here. He was scratching it. Every time, I tried to play with him with one of the peacock feathers, and he just had a scowl on his face. Well, if you want to see the scowl on his face, go to the Facebook page we created for him. Jojo Benedetto. That's Jojo Benedetto. Look him up. He has got a scowl. That was the meanest, angriest cat I have ever met in my entire life. I mean, and Kristen was the cat whisperer. And Kristen had such an affection for this cat going in because the cat reminded her of Simba, a cat that she had many years ago before Basil, actually. And Kristen, it was a point. Not a scratch or a pip or a rub even. It was a point. So Kristen did her darndest to get to know Jojo, and so on the way out the door, they came to pick him up, and all of a sudden he's friendlier. He's shown a little affection, and Kristen goes to rub him, and she's petting him, and all of a sudden, blammo! He's attached to her hand via his teeth, and pulls away, and there's all kinds of scratches from his teeth, and her hand is just a mess. It's a bloody mess. And a day later, her hand's all ballooned up, all red. A good portion of her hand, or a bad portion if you prefer, of her hand is all red and swollen. We went to the doctor. He gave her a very heavy-duty antibiotic, and it's responding, but it really, the cat let her in. He let her in. He let her pet her. He let her pet him. Jojo let Kristen pet him, and let her pet him, and let her pet him, and then whammo, and it was just horrible. It happened so fast that I didn't even realize that he had bitten her. I thought he had just clawed her, because the claw marks apparently are, and the clawing is not so bad with cats, but the bite, when you have the saliva, that's where you get into some problems. And we had to make sure, and they assured us that he had had his vaccinations, his timber, his rabies shots, and all that. So she wouldn't be in mortal peril. But the hand's all swollen up, and it stopped swelling up after she started taking the antibiotic, and she's making a recovery. But if you're out there, Jojo, damn you. Basil says, oh, from you to you, buddy, double fork you, or double you. So, the Scottish Referendum, Part 2, which is going to be coming up, Basil's calling it already. He says it's going to be a big, big win for the secessionists, the people that want to leave Great Britain and go off on their own, Scotland be its own sovereign nation, and join the European Union, and double Great Britain and David Cameron. And it was a good political ploy on his part. He played it both ways. When it was time for the referendum, whether to secede or not, he was very lovey-dovey with the Scottish, and why would you want to leave? We understand you want us to be part of the European Union. And then in order to win the election, he had to turn around and do an about-face and say that stupid Scottish will never be part of the European Union. And that apparently did the trick with his right-wing Tories. And they showed up in large numbers. He won the election. He won an outright majority in the House of Commons and in Parliament. And he's got the country, and now his country's going to be really under his control when all of the elements that voted for Labour, which are mostly the voters mainly were in Scotland, when they leave, Cameron's going to have then who's he going to pick on next, Basil? Who's going to be the next one that he picks on after the Scots? Basil said, well, I don't even have to say it. He didn't have to say it either. He said immigrants. They're the next ones that Britain's going to be beaten up on, because they invite them in to work for cheap, and then they razz them. Hey, you know what? Maybe it'll be like in what's a movie with Brad Pitt where he plays the boxer Mickey? Oh, Snatch, where Mickey is Irish, but he's also I'm kidding. Audience, come on, Bill, come on. Oh, Drew Carey's up there. LFFF, he's up there also, and gypsies. That's what it is. Thank you. We have a couple of gypsies in the audience, and they're the ones that just pointed to themselves and include me in as to who I was thinking of. So the gypsies will be the next ones. They'll be the downtrodden and the immigrants and everybody else that's not lily white nor related to. It was a rub. No, that was a pick. This is a rub. Anybody who's not related to the crown can get out of Britain, and Britain will shrink back to. What did Grover Norquist talk about the federal government? His great quote from decades ago. Now, Grover Norquist is a great figure within the Republican Party. They love him. It's kind of the corporate libertarian wing, if you can imagine that. He kind of transits back and forth from one to the other and tries to be both. But he said he wanted to shrink government to the size, this is in the United States, he wanted to shrink government to the size where you could drown it in a bathtub. And apparently that's what David Cameron's angling for too. He wants to screw the poor and let the rich have their way, and no apologies to those poor Britons who actually were stupid enough to vote for him. But so that's it. That's it. And I guess with that, let's get a couple of quickies in. Schwepper Essence, P, A, and W root beer. That's that extra letter, the P that gives it its zing. And how does we know the Basil that loves P, A, and W root beer? Look in his litter pan. Probably see a couple of drops of Schweppes in there also. Schwepper Essence. Coming up in the near future, Cinco de Junio, and I think we're about out of time. So from Basil BuddhaCat, have a blessed Sunday morning. Myself also. We're gonna go back and take a little nappy for a while. Have a blessed Sunday. Bye.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.